I know exactly what you are thinking. This year is the year in which you will finish all your cosplays. You have plenty of plans, plenty of characters, plenty of things to do. But the question is, how are you going to afford it? Yeah, I make myself that question every single month. Welcome to Cosplayland, I am Alice and I have been a cosplayer for 15 years and same as many of you, I am completely broke. Now, if you follow me, you will know that every year I make lots of cosplays and I have all kinds of levels and I use all kinds of materials, but the truth is that I do have a few tricks to make those cosplays not as expensive as not to break the bank. Cosplay is my full-time job, and if I were to do all those cosplays at full price every time, I wouldn't be able to afford food on my plate and I definitely wouldn't be able to feed my cat. So that is why after all these years I have come with a few tips and tricks that I think could be useful for anyone who is trying to make cosplays on a budget. The first question that you may be asking yourself is it worth doing a cosplay yourself? Because yes, being a cosplayer doesn't mean making your own cosplays. You can actually buy them and you can actually customize those that you buy on the stores. And there is lately a lot of shops where you can buy cosplays. Actually, I will be linking another video with lots of places where you can buy cosplays and materials, but that is another story. Ready-made cosplays are available and believe it or not, sometimes they are more affordable than just making the cosplays yourselves. I don't own many store-bought cosplays, but the ones that I have bought for a reason. For example, whenever I had to make a school uniform, I usually didn't bother making it myself because it's usually more expensive to buy the fabric by themselves than just buy the cosplay already made and you just have to slightly modify it. This is the case, for example, for my Ochako cosplay. The cost of the materials was higher than the actual store-bought cosplay and the results of the actual cosplay were still very good, so in some occasions it is actually cheaper to buy it. Even when you think a cosplay has a very high starting price, just think about it. Think of how many different materials you will need to buy in order to make that cosplay and consider if doing it yourselves is really worth it. If you want to do it because you want to, it's totally okay, but if you just want to wear that cosplay just to represent the character and just to play around for a little bit, maybe consider buying the cosplay on the store instead of making it yourself. If you have decided to make the cosplay yourself, and even if you haven't and you are buying it online, one thing to consider is the time factor. The longer you give yourself to make that cosplay is going to favor you, because if you buy something, for example, from an AliExpress shop which is based in China, it's probably going to be way cheaper than anything that you can buy in a store like Amazon that you will get delivered the next day. So make sure when you are making a cosplay on a budget, you give yourself plenty of time to collect those materials in order to get the better prices and the cheapest prices. Rush shipping, express shipping, or simply not being able to find the right materials and having to rebuy them again are things that will definitely increase the price of your cosplay. One of my best examples was my Mortal Kombat 1 Kitana. I made that cosplay in only 2 weeks. Unfortunately, because I didn't have time to research the materials, I had several mistakes and I had to buy extra materials because I didn't know in advance how much fabric I would need or which fabric would be best for the cosplay. And that cosplay in particular definitely cost me more than my average cosplay, only because I didn't plan in advance how long it would take me to get materials, or I couldn't go to some of my favorite places to buy materials because I just didn't have time to get them. Even if you plan in advance and you have everything ready for your cosplays, there will be hidden costs. So whenever you're making your budget for your cosplay, make sure you plan for them. Don't overlook things like accessories, props or makeup, because they will quickly add up to the cost. And also don't forget that you will be needing to probably buy a wig and contact lenses if you use them, and all those things add up to the costs. So make sure you have some money allocated to those props and accessories to make sure you are not broke before you even start. Even if you are on a budget, make sure you are still buying safe materials. Things like contact lenses should always be safe, so make sure instead of going for the best deals, you are going for the best companies to buy them, because you only have one pair of eyes and you will not be able to replace them. So please be safe and think of the materials from a safety point of view. Don't get something because it's cheaper if you think it's gonna hurt yourself. And one other thing you shouldn't be worrying about is buying all the expensive tools, because most of the time you won't need it. I know you see lots of videos and lots of tutorials with people using laser machine cutters and just using cutting machines and using the last embroidery software to make this or that cosplay. 99% of the time you don't need them. So make sure you are comfortable with the things that are available to you, because in most of the cases of those cosplayers that you see online, they have taken years to collect all those things that you see in their stories and in their tutorials. For example, it has taken me 15 years to buy this machine. I have been cutting my vinyl and just using my iron for years. I only bought that 2 years ago, and I have been doing this for 15 years, same as you. I started just with a thread and needle and with no fancy machinery nor anything expensive. Find the materials and the tools that fit your purposes, and don't go crazy buying all the crazy machinery, because most of the time you are not gonna need it. And also, buying machinery like this will add to the final cost. Buying things like this in the long term can save you time, but the reality is that if you were to buy a new sewing machine, a new iron machine, a new cutting machine for your very first cosplay or even your fifth, you will be broke before you even start having fun. Now that we have talked about the basics, let's talk about getting materials. And maybe an assistant. Hello. I have a helper now. Before you even start, check what you already have, because more often than not, you may have already all the things that you need in your house. Make a list of all the fabric, accessories, tools, and everything that you may have in your house that may help you do the cosplay that you need, because more often than not, it's very possible that you will have something that could help and could save you some money. And this includes things from your wardrobe as well. When I first started, I mostly made cosplays with clothes that I had in my wardrobe, because I didn't have any money to buy fabrics or materials, so I just used whatever was available to me at the time. Remember that something that looks like trash can become a beautiful cosplay if you just put enough time and effort into it. And if you don't have trash of your own, you can always go to a thrift store? You can always go to a thrift store to just get some materials that other people may have discarded. It's gonna be cheaper than buying them first-hand, and it's gonna save the environment by just getting all those things out of the landfills. Think outside the box. Materials like bed sheets can make really good cosplays, and it's one of my favorite tricks. I have many more cosplays made with bed sheets that you could imagine. Sometimes when I buy materials, I actually buy bed sheets because they are actually cheaper, and you can modify them as much as you need. You can just paint on them, you can do all kinds of things. For example, when I made my Nezuko cosplay in her yukata version, I used bed sheets and just markers in order to create all the designs, and I am very happy with how it turned out, considering the actual cosplay only cost me a few pounds for the markers, because the bed sheets were something that I was gonna just throw away anyway. So that is a great way to make a great cosplay without having to spend a lot of money. Of course, you may not always find the things that you are looking for in a thrift store, and you may still need to buy some materials. If you are going for affordable materials, my favorite ones are polycotton and craft foam because they are actually quite cheap and you can just make so many things. I have so many cosplays made with simple polycotton that starts maybe at £3 a meter, or craft foam, because once again, even if you see a lot of people using the high quality foam from very expensive shops, more often than not you can get away with craft foam from an art store, which is significantly cheaper, and you may not get such a clear and crisp result as with high density foam, but it will still work and look pretty good if you know how to treat it. Anything you buy in a multi-price store will also work. Remember, it's all about the vision. If you think something looks like a character, that is enough, and you will be able to do wonders with a little bit of paint, a little bit of craft foam, and a little bit of love. And still talking about materials, remember, if you buy your materials in advance, you can get really good offers. I almost never buy fabrics at full price because I am always making my plans early to make sure I can just get coupons, or maybe just go for a sale, or go for remnants and discounts and offers. Keep an eye on your favorite shops because more often than not, you will be able to get your materials half the price or way cheaper. And don't forget, places like AliExpress and eBay will also have offers for fabrics and all kinds of materials, so even if they take a little bit longer to arrive, if you are just concerned about the price, you may be able to get them cheaper online than you will ever find it in a brick and mortar shop. Another trick that I use a lot is reusing the materials that I already have, like my wigs or my contact lenses. Before you go crazy buying a new wig, make sure you don't have something available in your stash, because more often than not you will be able to get away with restyling an old wig or just getting wefts and parts from other wigs in order to just create a new hairstyle. And same as reusing wigs, another trick that I do a lot because I love cosplay and I just want to cosplay new characters all the time. It doesn't mean that you need to go everything from scratch each time. So I do have some characters that I have created from the base from other characters. For example, when I made my Love is War cosplay for Kaguya-sama, I also made my Chika cosplay, and I also made a Miko Ino cosplay, so basically I used the exact same dress for 3 different characters, and I actually do this quite often. But you don't have to limit yourself to using the same exact outfit. You could also be reusing parts of your cosplay. For example, one thing that I use a lot is petticoats and underwear for cosplays. So if you make one of those, you will be able to reuse them for several characters, and it will save some time and money whenever you plan according to those little pieces that would take a long time to make from scratch each time. So make sure you are thinking about all those little pieces that you can use for several things as well. If you have been following, you will know I really like kimonos, and one thing that I have been reusing a lot was all my kimono underwear, because that is something that I can reuse several times. I only have one set of kimono underwear that I made, however I have already used it for 3, 4 or 5 cosplays, and I have several more that I want to do, and I will definitely be using the same exact underwear. But of course, before you even start thinking about materials, you need a plan. My best advice ever is to plan your cosplays in advance, because if you plan them in advance, you will already know if you will be able to complete that cosplay or not. There's nothing worse than trying to make a cosplay and then realize that you don't have the money or the time or just the will to just finish it because it's not going to work for you. Making a pattern yourself for your cosplay, it could be theoretically cheaper, unless you are like me and just buy very expensive books that teach you how to pattern and how to make things, and the actual cost is probably way more expensive than if you had bought the patterns in the first place. However, it is very easy to get carried away and buy 5 different patterns that have 1 piece each that could work for your cosplay, when it is actually much cheaper and cost effective to get some base patterns that you can use for several things and already come with a few instructions on how to modify them. Reusing patterns and using them for several projects, it's very standard, so make sure that when you get a pattern, it is the one that you actually need. And of course, if you are using patterns, don't forget to make a mock-up, because more often than not, when you buy a pattern and you just take for granted that it's gonna work the first time, it just doesn't, because everybody has a different body shape and everything is different for everybody, and you will need to test those patterns, and same as when you go to the shops to buy a new t-shirt, you are gonna be testing it on the... what are they called? On the changing rooms to see if they fit you or not. Patterns are exactly the same. They may not fit first try, and if you make a mock-up first with very cheap fabric, you will be able to save the more expensive fabric instead of making a mistake and just having to rebuy all the materials, because that's gonna cost twice as much money. If you are on a budget, make sure you write down your budget and you stick to it. Make a list of all the materials and all the things that you will need to make your cosplay and how much they are gonna cost. Sometimes you may need to buy those materials in several months because you won't be able to afford them in one go, so make sure you have plenty of time in order to gather all those materials. And if I give you an extra tip, make sure you have all the materials before you start your cosplay to avoid surprises. In your list, make sure you take into account priorities. For me, things like shoes are not so important, so I will often just get shoes that look close enough to the characters instead of buying a new pair for each one of them. I just wouldn't have a space for so many shoes. For example, things like pre-style wigs will save you some time. However, if you are on a budget, consider buying wigs which are just plain with no styling, because those are probably going to be cheaper, even if they take a bit longer to get into the style that you need for your cosplay. So far I've been taking for granted that you already know how to do a cosplay, you already know how to sew, you already know how to do crafts, etc, etc. However, you may also need some extra help showing you how to do this or that technique, and my advice to save some money is to check on resources like YouTube and blogs. I personally have plenty of videos and a lot of free resources available for you on my channels, including my blog where you can download free patterns and things. But there is also cosplay communities and Discord channels and all kinds of Facebook groups where you can actually find some help to create some of these things if you don't have the money to spend on tutorials and other advanced workshops. And having a group of friends that can help you could be very useful, because sometimes I literally get free fabric just because I say, hey, I can sew. I can't tell you how many times people have just given me free stuff just because they were not using it anymore and they just wanted to get rid of it, and I just collected it all. You never know when you're gonna use it, so if someone gives you free stuff, you get it and hoard it and end up with a room like mine. Finally, the last thing that you will want to consider is that time is money. I know I just told you that you don't need the fancy machines, but the reason why some pro cosplayers have all these fancy machines is because time is money, and every second that you spend extra on cutting something, maybe you would be able to just spend going out and just having fun with your cats or your friends. So make sure you are comfortable with the amount of time things will take to make your cosplay, because yes, you can technically make a cosplay with cardboard, but it will potentially be way more expensive than using other materials like foam or even Warbler, even if it's not one of my favorite ones. People buy more expensive tools and materials for a reason. For example, when I made my Wednesday cosplay, I used very cheap fabric and I instantly regretted it because it frayed so much. It was very difficult to control it, and even if it looked great, it probably took twice as long to make this cosplay with the cheap material than if I had spent a little bit more money on a better material. Same with paints. Yes, you can go to the craft store and just buy the cheapest paint for £1, a whole set, but the reality is that you will probably need at least 10 layers in order to achieve the same results as one layer of a more expensive paint. If you are in a coin crunch, think about time, because rushing a project can be very costly, both because you are more likely to make mistakes if you haven't slept enough, or you haven't eaten, or you have been working for way too long, and that will make you have to waste more money on materials, because you will have to remake parts that will both be more expensive and also will take longer. Whenever I buy something without sitting down and just checking on all the possibilities, I end up just having some issues, like when I bought the wrong material to make my katana fans and I still haven't been able to use that material, which wasn't expensive but wasn't cheap either, and it's just like gathering dust in the corner of my room. Focus on a project that matches your skill, because experimenting is also going to be costly. If you don't know how to dye fabric, it's very possible that you will fail several times before you actually get nice results. So keep in mind that can cost extra as well, and sometimes in those cases it's actually better to just find a tutorial or just buy some kind of how to do things in order to save some headaches and save some materials, because I'm sure there will be someone out there that will be able to tell you which things will work and will not work, and therefore will save you some money on doing your own experimentation. If you love planning your cosplay, make sure to check my video where I explain how I plan mine, and where I use my cosplay planner that has lots of pages for you to just write down all the things that you may need, as well as costume materials and time constraints and all kinds, and it could be a useful resource that you can use for all your cosplay in the future to make sure you don't forget anything. Remember, it doesn't matter how well you plan your cosplays, there will always be unexpected things, and more often than not you may need to change some of your plans. However, planning in advance is one of the easiest ways to know before you start if you will be able to manage and cosplay your cosplay. And these are my favorite tips for making cosplay in a budget, but I'm sure you have plenty more, so make sure to leave them in the comments and just let us know what is your favorite tip or trick to just save some money that you can then spend on awesome merch in your conventions. And remember, you have lots of extra tips and tutorials that you can check on my YouTube channel, my blogs, even on my Patreon, where I usually send free stuff to my followers, even those who are free members. We also have a Discord channel where we discuss problems and how to fix things, so if that's something you're interested in, make sure to join. Thank you very much for watching, and I will be seeing you in the next adventure. Bye! Do you want to be the star?